Who am I? I'm trying to keep it short, but there's a lot. So basically got into SEO through video games. I used to be a prolific gamer as a kid, and was lucky enough to kind of be part of this whole broadband internet kind of trend, which allows you to be online constantly. And so I got into online gaming, played some kind of tournaments. And at some point we wanted to play some more professional tournaments and needed a website to apply. And I was the guy to kind of figure out how to make a website. And so it all started from there. I taught myself HTML, CSS, and Photoshop, and built some really horrible websites. I'm talking tables, iframes, all that shebang. Anyway, you know, at some point I could ask myself, okay, where are all the people coming from that are visiting our site? And that got me on the track of Google Analytics. Then I found some online forums and understood that there's something called search engine optimization. And that was kind of the beginning of it all. And that was probably when I was 15, 16, around that time.
Oh, wow, dude. So you got started young then.
I got started young, and I was lucky to kind of fall into it.
Yes,
right?
That's exactly how I feel, man. I fell ass backwards into it in a coffee shop. Literally, some dude overheard me and somebody else talking about Instagram. This is like 10 years ago now, and he was like, "Fuck Instagram, you should be focused on Google." And we were like, "What? Good, okay."
Interesting.
But it's great. So how old are you now?
32.
32. Okay, damn. So you've been doing this for pushing 20 years then.
Yeah, kind of. But, you know, professionally, I would say maybe I'm in it for like 10 years, you know.
Okay, so how did you make that step to being a professional SEO, I guess?
Right. So it took me until after college so I studied business, and I was born and raised in Germany, if you couldn't tell by the accent by now. And I was pretty much on a different trajectory. And then at some point after college, I started in an online marketing agency, and I got lucky to be invited to do a traineeship at a really well-established online marketing agency that consulted mainly enterprise clients. Okay. And that kind of put me on a fast track and allowed me to get experience in dealing with large sites, big companies, you know, and it all took off from there. So I was, you know, again, like tons of luck, discovering it, falling into it, starting on the right foot, getting really good guidance and mentorship. And that's, I think, why I was able to progress really quickly.
Yeah, I think that's key. I think if you look at like a lot of the people that are considered like top SEOs now are people that when they were younger in their career were fortunate enough to go work at a big agency or go work in-house somewhere where they were given they don't teach technical SEO like in Facebook groups. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something that you actually have to go and learn hands-on. And
that's true of not only SEO, but also like any type of this like technical work. You're not just gonna like trip and fall and learn it.
You too, right?
You have to go. Yeah, like I started my career at BlackRock doing like financial data analysis. I would have never learned. First of all, I would have never been interested in a lot of the more technical stuff until you see like what it looks like when you have a whole team and resources put into it.
Yeah.
It really helps to start in
it's really night and day. I think that, you know, I was fortunate. I learned about, like I said, SEO in a coffee shop, but I quickly realized what I didn't know after like 2 years of like basically failing, trying to build a consultancy or agency, whatever you want to call it. This is like 10 years ago. So I went and I worked for Sapient Nitro, and I was like, holy shit. Like there's so much, I mean, just like the foundation. And I don't consider myself a technical SEO, but I can have the conversation with people about it, you know? Right. And I can identify, you know, I actually just today referred a client to like a JavaScript SEO expert. Like I don't know that stuff, but I know enough now, know about it to know the right people to help me out with that stuff and still make me look good for clients. So, but I never would have known that. Like if I would have stuck with the whole Facebook group way of learning SEO, I'd have been like, just build some links to it, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when you look at all, like most new jobs, they're all practitioner jobs, not theorist jobs. And that's because of technology, right? Everything progresses so quickly that you cannot wrap things up in a 3-year syllabus or in a 3-year bachelor's degree. That doesn't make a lot of sense because by the time you're finished, everything is outdated already, you know? So the new stuff is like, you'll learn it from being a practitioner and working hands-on. and
So,
not from theory. I mean, there is a theoretical part, don't get me wrong, but the real experience comes from doing this stuff. And I was lucky enough to be exposed to that early on.
so flash forward to now, you're with G2 Crowd. Talk to me a little bit about your day-to-day there. Because I see you traveling a lot, you're doing the conference thing. And that's something else I want to touch on just real quick, because a lot of our audience is more of the entrepreneurial agency owner type stuff. But like, I think that a lot of like SEO has become such an important part of so many companies, not every company, but a company like G2, I mean, SEO is the heart of that marketing, right? And when you go to be an in-house SEO at a company like that, I look at like Tim Solo too at Ahrefs, and like, dude, the perks of like, you know, not only a good salary, but like the fact that like they want you to go and to talk and like travel and all that type of stuff. Like, me as an agency person, it's really hard for me to find. I'm like, dude, I don't have the time, like this and that. Like, I got clients and all this stuff. But when you're in-house, they're like, no, go do that because you're helping the brand. There's a whole bunch of benefits, I think, that you can probably speak to too about being an in-house SEO that most people don't even know about. So, I mean, talk to me a little about G2. Like, talk to me about like what your day-to-day there is like, what you guys are doing. Cool shit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So G2, we actually rebranded from G2 Crowd to G2 in April. So now we're just called G2. And the name comes from the military, actually. So the G2 is kind of the intelligence department. And so that's where the whole idea came from. You know, give me the G2 on X is kind of the classical saying. And for us, it's give me the G2 on software. So we're trying to be kind of an objective marketplace for software reviews and helping companies to buy the right B2B software. That's kind of our thing. And it's an interesting market because the current incumbents, you know, it's basically a pay-to-play thing. And so we're trying to be an objective marketplace. And I built the buyer side of that marketplace. So I joined G2 in March as VP of Content and SEO. I have a couple of large teams from technical SEO to content marketing, content promotion. So we're about 30, a bit more over 30 people in total. And again, my kind of job is to bring people who want to, or to address people who want to buy B2B software as early on in the user journey as possible through any kind of inbound marketing channel you can imagine, from, of course, SEO and content marketing, to also email, social, referral traffic, all that kind of stuff. And so my role is very strategic now. It used to be much more hands-on, and I still kind of am able to dive really deep into some of the things. But I have like a full stack as technical SEO team at the moment, or a full stack link building team, or, you know, email people dedicated only to Reddit, Quora, and all that kind of stuff. So it's much more holistic. And,
oh, wow. Can we unpack that a little bit? So those people, like, you have a full-time person, or is that like a contractor? How does that work? Just writing on Quora. Just writing on Quora. Wow.
Just on Quora. Yeah.
Dude, that's
Quora,
awesome.
Reddit. Yeah.
I mean, that to me, that tells me that company is 100%. But that's awesome, dude, because it's very rare that you see companies like that are so bought in to that level to hire somebody to write a fucking Quora thread. You know what I mean? And like,
totally.
That's awesome, dude. That's really awesome. So, I mean, damn. So how does that work? You identify the need, you hire the people, like to just pretty much whatever you want.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, as you said, you know, SEO is a major channel and inbound marketing in general. And so I was lucky to inherit a large team, and I've kind of restructured it a little bit over time. So, but a lot of that stuff still comes from content that we create ourselves and that we promote. So to take a step back, we have a couple of sites. We have the www.g2.com, which is our core marketplace. And then we have the learn.g2.com, which is a fully fledged media publication. We've published 1,000 content pieces in the last 6 months. So we have a huge writer team or editorial team. And then on the other side, we have a big optimization and promotion team. And that's where it comes back to one person who's fully dedicated to promoting our content on Quora and Reddit. And when I'm saying promoting our content, I mean like really engage with our community and our audience there. It's not just like post a link there and, you know what I mean? Like it's really like fully fledged engagement.
Yeah, paying attention.
Yes, paying attention. Actually, you know, like actually not being that person that just drops a link and that tries to be helpful. And it all comes back to like a big vision and strategy. And that's kind of where I come in, right? So instead of me going on Quora and engaging with the people myself, it's much more that I facilitate like a business partnership with Quora to get us into the beta for company profiles, for example. And you know what I mean? Like that's more my role now.
Gotcha. So, I I actually, you kind of initially came out on my radar for some of the work that you've done in internal linking. That was with your previous company, correct?
Well, that was with Atlassian. I mean, I'm still involved in that at G2, of course, and it's kind of a specialty of mine. So, but the time that I dig really deep into those things is much lower than it used to be at Atlassian. You know, at Atlassian, I built a team of pretty much 5-6 people of core technical SEO, and now I have like a full stack team for that myself. So again, I'm more hands off, but I still sometimes love to get lost in that stuff.
For sure. But like, okay, so for example, with G2, I mean, how do you address internal links was supposed to be the topic of this. We just got off track for it. But like, how would you address, because something that, so for example, for us, like we all know that internal links are incredibly important. They pass equity, blah, 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 all that fun shit, right? The challenge with internal links to me is less about knowing that and understanding, and you can use Ahrefs, you can Screaming Frog to get these links. It's not overly difficult, but like, how do you actually take action on it? I find that like, the biggest issue that we've always had with internal links is like, great, this blog post is about SEO, this page is about SEO, let's link them. But like, how do you do that at scale? And more importantly, like, how do you actually execute that, right? I mean, yes. how do you do that?
Yes, that is a great question. So on a grand scheme, first of all, you have to differentiate between two types of sites: editorial versus more templatized sites, right? So the www.g2.com lives off of a handful of page templates, maybe a bit more. Whereas on learn.g2.com, every article is somewhat different, right? There's not, sure, we have an article template, but it's not as modular as on the www side of things. So that's the first differentiator, because if you have an editorial site, all your internal links are pretty much manually created, most of them, except for the navigation and stuff, right? On the modular side of things, you can play with link modules, like related products, for example. That's a classic. That's the first differentiation we have to make, because it means that we have to follow a different type of approach. And the execution is also different, because on an editorial side, you manually change a lot of that stuff, unless you have a super highly sophisticated, internal linking program, which comes with its own challenges. On the modular side, you can impact things at a greater scale. So the first step is you want to get an understanding of your current landscape of internal links. And what that means is you want to understand what pages have a high crawl depth versus a low one. And so it basically means how many clicks from the homepage away are they. And so to quickly double click on that, there's this kind of notion that every page must be within 3 clicks from the homepage. That is kind of a good start, but it quickly gets tricky, right? Like look at a site like Amazon, at a certain scale, it's just not feasible unless you want 100,000 links from the homepage, which makes no freaking sense. Mm-hmm. So I also, like there's a lot of context, a lot of gray in a lot of these conversations, and I just wanted to point that out. So you looked at the crawl depth of your pages. Then you want to take a perspective of page templates. So on G2.com, for example, we have compare pages, we have product pages, we have vendor pages. So you want to basically map your crawl depth to a page template level to get an understanding of, is there a pattern where a certain page template is less well internally linked? That's actually what you're looking for. And then from there, you can make an informed decision of how you want to structure these link modules and how you want to link from, like in between different page templates, and then how do you want to improve that? So it's basically a lot of segmentation that you have to make to be able to come to a conclusion that helps you to improve your internal linking. I hope that kind of makes sense.
That does make sense, yeah. David, I see you thinking there, David.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about this because we're redesigning my blog, Coding is for Losers, right now. So I'm thinking about this in the context of like internal linking, and I was just mapping out like our categories, right? Yeah. I know, from reading your stuff, you talk a lot about focusing on conversion pages. So assuming that, say, like a category page, is not a specific conversion page other than like maybe a catch-all CTA at the bottom. How do you think about linking when you have, say on Coding is for Losers, right? We have one blog post that is like the main conversion page that gets, 80% of organic traffic, just like ranking for some bigger keywords. How do you think about internal linking to that when like really your secondaries are mostly categories, or do you elevate that, to be in the nav and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the kind of perspective that I came from in writing some of those articles is, again, that there are two different types of sites. There are sites where people can convert on almost every page, like a Pinterest, for example, and there are sites where people convert on a few landing pages, like like your blog, Coding for Losers, or like an Atlassian, or like a lot of SaaS businesses,
like the product pages you call those, right?
Exactly, okay, product pages. Yeah. And so for product page driven sites, or where they have a few points of conversion, you want to make sure that your internal linking is aligned with that. And what that means is that those pages need to be, from a click depth perspective, as close to the homepage as possible. So I would certainly make sure that they are one click away from the homepage, but also that they get all the link equity that they need. And that kind of funnels back to a couple of tactics. So first of all, you want to have, whenever possible, you want to link from your editorial content to that landing page with a variety of anchor text, of internal anchor text. So I usually go with a 50-50 split. 50% is for the main keyword, and then the other 50% are a bit more, distributed in terms of, or diversified in terms of synonyms and related keywords. That kind of helps you to get kind of the best mix of internal anchor text. But then you also want to make sure that you understand which of all your pages have the best kind of PageRank profile. And that plays into another idea. And so before we jump into that, when I'm saying the best PageRank profile, what I mean is that you want to identify the kind of handful of pages that are the strongest, from which you can set internal links to that product page. And so how do you understand which of your pages have the best PageRank profile? That's where kind of I built this model that I call Tipper True Internal PageRank. And the whole spiel behind it is that it's not enough to just look at internal links. You also have to factor in external links, right? Because what happens is a lot of times people crawl their sites with Screaming Frog or some sort of other tool. And those tools calculate your internal PageRank only based on your internal links. And that's nice. That's great. Like, nothing against that. But if you imagine that, you could have an external backlink that's super strong, that maybe points at one blog article you wrote, that skews your your whole internal link graph. So you want to factor your backlinks into that, and then you get a holistic view of which pages actually have a strong PageRank. And then you can, from there, link your product pages. And a little caveat, I know that when I say PageRank, everybody actually flips out because Google doesn't use PageRank anymore. Let's use it as a theoretical concept, okay? I'm not claiming Google actually uses PageRank. I'm just using it as, like a concept.
A couple quick follow-ups off that, Kevin. So you said one click away for your key pages, right? So would you suggest using a top-level navigation? So for example, I have a client now, they're in the cannabis, single product, they're becoming multi-product in the cannabis space, right? The concept about what that company runs on is a process called decarboxylation. It's a very scientific process that requires a lot of additional content to get customers to understand it, right? So we wrote a really in-depth guide for them. It's ranking really well for like, what is decarboxylation, right? That's a key post to that website, to the point where like, it's almost a product page, you know what I'm saying? Is that something that you put on the top level navigation? When you say one click away, is that like top level navigation, or does that mean modifying the home page's design to include links to that content?
I would recommend both. I would try as much as possible to have key pages also referenced in the body content on the homepage. And that comes back to Google, I don't want to say devaluating top navigation links and footer links, but they certainly don't have the same impact from a link equity perspective than editorial content. And so we kind of also have to distinguish a little bit between how internal links are used to crawl a site and how they pass link equity. Those are two different things as well, right? For crawling, I think top navigation and footers, like you should go all in on those. Like don't hold back, really fill those things up in a user-friendly way. For link equity, you kind of want to try to embody or to facilitate body content a bit more. So I would modify the homepage to give you a short answer.
Okay. So I actually heard that before too, is that, so like, first of all too, is that you mentioned about anchor text. You can get penalized for internal links now, right? Is that, I think I saw that floating around somewhere, correct? If you over optimize, just like an external link, if you hit too many exact match anchors, then you can maybe not penalize yourself, but certainly hinder your search's performance, correct?
Yeah, I think the sensitivity to a internal link penalty is much lower compared to an external backlink penalty, but you can certainly take it to an extreme, and that can get you penalized. So one example that I saw, so back in in Germany when I kind of started my agency path, and we worked with a lot of big publishers, major publishers, and one of them got penalized for that was super black-hatted stuff. So basically what they did is they built a program that would internally link a term whenever they had a category page for it. So they kind of overnight seeded hundreds and thousands of internal links that were like pretty, unnatural in lots of cases. And so that is super easy for Google to detect, and they got them penalized. And so I would not recommend you to go after such extreme tactics. However, I think you have a bit more leeway internally. And so when it comes to anchor text, I think actually most sites don't make enough use of internal anchor text. They have a lot of, internal anchor text like here, and those kind of boilerplate keywords, some like click here or learn more here, or learn more. That I would try to stray away from and optimize a little bit. So I think, think more about internal anchor text, and also kind of think about this 50-50 barbell strategy, where you're like 50% is hardcore anchor text and the other 50% is a bit more diversified in terms of synonyms and related keywords.
Word. So go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. If you want to stay on this point, I'm really curious at the business end of that process, right? If you're looking at, say, like your editorial site with thousands of posts, how are you breaking down, or how often, or what does the spreadsheet look like at the end of the day, where you're looking at what's our anchor text, where are we linking internally, where are these posts relevant to your more conversion-y pages? How do you kind of break that down?
Yeah, how to break that down? It's a big spreadsheet. I can tell you that much.
So, are you in spreadsheets, or are you in like a BigQuery or more of a database?
Both, man, both. But I feel like I use them for different aspects. So I love BigQuery, anything SQL, and joining data together, and kind of just look at, just try to get bring several data sets together, but then also like the spreadsheet aspect and conditional formatting and visualizing data a bit more. So it kind of goes hand in hand. At Atlassian, we certainly did a lot more with SQL databases, with kind of our own data warehouse set up. And you could do some really cool stuff. So there would have been super easy to say, okay, give me for a certain domain all the click depth and the internal page rank, the backlink profile, and the organic traffic. And then it's super easy to draw correlations. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of I think the high end. That's like the Cadillac of what we're talking about. That's kind of the end goal. So if you're able to get there, I think you're in a really good spot. But you can also be a bit more scrappy. And so the basic spreadsheet would have columns like click depth, internal page rank, chi rank, external backlinks, and you can use a couple of different metrics to measure external backlinks. It can be something like domain popularity. It can be a proprietary metric, just get started with something. And then I would also recommend something like, what is the share of voice for that keyword, or what is the organic traffic? So you have different KPIs that basically tell you how, what is the click depth? I think that's pretty set. And then what is the backlink profile strength? and what is the SEO optimization degree, organic traffic degree, right? And I think you can play around with a couple of different metrics, but that's kind of the holistic view that you want to take to understand where can I, where am I underperforming in terms of organic traffic or keywords, and where am I under overperforming in terms of internal linking. And what you'll often find is that some pages are heavily internally linked and they're performing well in terms of organic traffic, and then others are underlinked and they're performing not so well. And you kind of want to try to balance it out a bit more. That's really the high level view.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess at the very end of that, when you've identified, hey, we need to boost some internal links to this specific page, and you're looking back through the sitemap, like where are we getting those links from? Do you do any type of like contextual analysis, or is that at that point just like, your pages, you look through and see, oh, we can add one here. This is relevant.
Yeah. So it depends a little bit on how your site, or basically how your URL structure is set up. If you're able to extract the main topic that a page targets from the URL structure, I think you're in a really good position to just decompose the URL and understand how it plays together semantically. I'm not aware of a tool. I'm sure you can use R to build some sort of a topical internal graph. I haven't done that yet, but I have a really smart analyst who's like really proficient in R. I'm gonna run some experiments with her help on that. But I haven't yet built like an internal topical graph. But I think you can do that, where you basically understand the different topics of your site, and on top of that put a link graph, and on top of that put a graph of basically your organic traffic. I think that's like a highly complex model that would be kind of something that I would love to work on in the next couple of years. But kind of coming back to your question, I think if you can extrapolate, or if you can extract the target topic from your URLs, it is very much possible to say, hey, from a topical perspective or editorial perspective, here we're able to kind of link more between two topics. And again, I think you can really take that to the next level with something like R.
Yeah, so I guess at the manual end, if you have just really solid category or tagging, if you're using something like WordPress, that can be that's really helpful for usage down the line. It's not just about upfront visibility, it's for your own benefit to do that type of stuff.
Yes.
And yeah, on the kind of like topic identification, one thing that one of our developers is looking at right now is using a Google natural search API to identify entities. We're just at the first stage of playing around with it, but we'll see I'm curious really how accurate that is and how helpful that can be for this kind of process.
Yeah, I love the NLP API. There's so much I think to be gained out of it, but yes, there is a lot of noise, and you have to filter through a lot of the data that you get. So I've only kind of barely played around with it a little bit, but the categorization is super interesting. And then also to look at how many different entities Google is able to recognize in what type of salience. So I don't want to detract too much from internal linking, but there's certainly, like you can open this door to a whole nother world and a whole nother level when you bring entity into the mix of internal linking as well. I think if you want to stay super scrappy, you can certainly look at something like the click depth and internal page rank of each of your each of your pages, extract the main keyword from those pages, or maybe you already have it mapped out, and then get an understanding of which topics of your site are well internally linked and which are not, And so I think that also kind of helps you to understand the taxonomy of your site a bit better, and maybe even the ontology, depending on what type of site you're dealing with. But I think it's super insightful to just play around with that a little bit and look for patterns. I think pattern recognition is really kind of what it all comes down to, mainly in terms of internal linking, in terms of topical optimization, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and like you said, if you want to be scrappy and you're working on a site that's not huge, you can do all this just by looking at it, right? You don't need any fancy tools. It's just when you get beyond, I don't know, in our experience, like 10,000 pages, you kind of lose the plot looking at data manually.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And again, like spreadsheets are your biggest friend here. I think you can even extract some cool data from Google Search Console of your most internally linked pages, of your best performing queries, and like see if there's a correlation, see how that interacts. I think a lot of people uh, don't start even with that step. So download into spreadsheet, like use the basic correlation formula in Google Sheets or in Excel, and just see what comes out of it, right? Like see what patterns you can see, and then cut your data into 50 percentiles. So see what do the most internally linked pages have in common versus the least internally linked pages, and I'm very certain that you'll gain a good understanding from just that alone. So we played that. There's this presentation that I gave at Tech SEO Boost last year about how we kind of applied this tipper model at Atlassian. And there was this one application where we looked at our marketplace. It's a $500 million business. It's major, it's heavily templatized. So you only have a handful of page templates. And we found a very simple case by applying that model where we saw that our vendor pages, or our app pages in that case, were very weakly internally linked. And then we had these category pages that were very highly internally linked. And just by adding more links to our category pages, we're able to balance that graph out and saw like major returns. So I think we increased the organic traffic by about 160% over 12 months, roughly something like that, just by this one simple fix. So yeah, internal linking heavily underrated. And in the end, you get to these weird conclusions that are very simple, and you ask yourself, shit, like why haven't I seen that? But you often need to go that painful route of crunching tons of data to get there.
That's a big jump. So you did nothing else to those pages. I mean, I'm sure they picked up some links naturally here and there, but that's interesting, man. I mean, I would just hypothesize on a site that size with that much equity already. It's just those pages are kind of orphaned in a sense. They're not getting as much love. So internal links definitely push that equity quickly. But like, I mean, that's a lot. Basically what you did is a lot of work though, right? For that. On like what type you would recommend that mainly for like e-commerce enterprise style websites, not like if I have a 300 page agency WordPress website, like how much effort do I need to put into internal linking? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I going to, people know they're not going to see 180% return from internal linking, but like how much of a difference do you think it actually makes on smaller websites that are less authoritative, externally linked meaning?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on there. So you definitely see more of those returns the larger your site is. There's no doubt about that. The smaller the site is, the more I would actually look at like what are your strongest backlinks and where do they point at, and what can you do with that internal page, right? Is there an opportunity to link to another page that's highly important? I think that's where, for example, I think that's why the topic cluster model is so successful that Matt Barbie came up with. It's by applying exactly that idea. Where do I get super strong backlinks, and how can I use them in some sort of a structured way to distribute that link equity to other internal pages? But yeah, to come back to your question, you're absolutely right. The larger your site is, the more you'll benefit from optimizing internal linking at scale, because it is almost impossible to build a backlink for every page. So you have to better distribute what you already get.
And it's just unnatural too. I mean, some people are still operating under link building like it's 2012, and they're just going to jam links to a page, even though Google knows like that page is never going to get links, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like never going to get organic links to that page. So hammering certain pages with links external links is just not a good idea. But like leveraging, Brian Dean used to talk about this back in the day. I don't know if he still talks about it in his course, but like the concept of, it's basically kind of like what Barbie talked about at HubSpot in a very small scale, which is like build a power page and then use that power page to redirect equity using internal links, right? So power page being like, so for example, like if I had an e-commerce store that sold socks, right? Like sock pages, unless you're like buying blogger links or like, affiliate links, whatever, then like you're probably not going to pick up too much links for it. But instead you could do a huge guide on like how to like buy socks, like how to fit them, how they should fit, like what shoes to wear, something like that, right? And then that will pick up a lot of links naturally, organically. You can hit that with outreach, you can hit that with guest posting, whatever, and then use internal links to push to your, pages that don't naturally get external links as like the best option to not build links directly to those pages.
Yes, 100%. And you know, in case of doubt, use the homepage. Honestly, man, that's why I'm such a big fan of using the homepage to distribute link equity. And I think that's also where this idea of click depth is coming from. And so I think honestly, like most people completely underutilize their homepage. It should not be a link fest where you have like, you know, like tons of links that are horrible, but some of the best sites out there, they make really good use of their homepage. And I think it's probably one of the most overlooked pages from an SEO standpoint of view, but also one of the most potent ones.
So we got a question that came in from Gabriel, and this is, I think, what David and I would actually probably like to segue to too. So David and I, well, David, I should say, I tagged along, but David builds automation solutions. Like I said, he's using a lot of BigQuery now too. He can talk more about that. But we're building what we call recipes, meaning that like we want to build something that's going to be like an internal linking recipe. So like it runs in Sheets. It basically helps people to kind of automate a lot. That's why I was asking about this tedious process of, you know, how do you, if you were going to start, like David's site is a perfect example, codingistforlosers.com, probably like a 100-page website. I think that's probably standard with like the lower, I don't want to say the lower majority of the web, but like people that are marketers, they got agency websites or small websites, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah, working with local sites, stuff like
exactly. Like, how do we take this process? Because I do believe internal linking is one of those things. When I look at like the Pareto's principle of SEO and like the things that actually drive results, I do believe no matter what size of websites, internal links make that conversation, right? It's just a matter of what priority do they get in terms of when do you do them upfront in month one, like you do with an enterprise website, or do you do them month 6 for a smaller website? Either way, I think that internal links deserve to be a part of that important. You must do this for SEO if you want to get maximum results. But like, what does that process look like? So basically what Gabriel asked in the Facebook chat here is he said, when doing content creation at scale or when trying to do internal linking for a website, what do you use to track the anchors and internal linking? Sheets, blah, 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 et cetera. And which feeds into, I think, what David and I were trying to figure out from this conversation too is like, how can we build a template for internal linking in Google Sheets, right? Like what needs to be in that sheet? And like, how do we execute it too, right? I mean, in keeping in mind the fact that like David has the ability to automate a lot of this stuff. There's going to be a manual element to it too, of course, but like, let's start with a sheet. Like, where do we get the data? Do we get it from Search Console? Should we get it from a crawling tool? Like, where do we actually get that data? Because somebody else asked a question too. They said, it was a good point. They said, when I'm running like a crawl, the data is kind of inconsistent because it's going to have the footer links on it too. It's going to have the top level navigation links in there too. Like, how do we kind of like just parse out, to your point too, is that like, I almost put top level navigation links as part of UX now too. Like that decarboxylation guide, that I need people to see that in order to get them to purchase, so they don't have a million fucking questions about the product, right? So like, yes, it will help with SEO, but it's also going to help with the path to conversion, right? The nurturing process on the website. But like, how do we get rid of those and focus on the internal links that are just going to impact like passing equity, I guess is the right way to do it. So like, where do we get that data from?
Yes, absolutely. So let's start with step one. I think crawls are the most effective ways to get that data. If you're an enterprise or if you have a bit of money, you can probably afford something like an on-crawl or a Bodify or deep crawl or write or all the tools that I forgot. And I think a weekly cadence is probably optimal, right? It's going to be almost impossible for you to keep track by yourself by adding each internal link into a sheet, and yet unless you have a really small site and a really good overview. But even then, I would really recommend you to run a crawl because it gives you an idea of your internal link graph as well. So crawl is the first step, and most crawlers will allow you to tag the internal links that are coming from a top navigation or a footer versus in body, but just simply like a binary field saying like yes is in top navigation or no, by looking at the HTML template, right? So if you run on something like a WordPress or a Shopify or a HubSpot, that should be even easier. If you have some other sort of CMS, it should be also relatively straightforward to extract the tag. So you could, for example, like one way to do this is to use Screaming Frog, custom extraction, and then just put in the HTML wrapper that the link is surrounded by. It'll give you a spreadsheet that tells you if this link is in the top navigation or in the footer, or if it's in the in body, right? So that's kind of the first kind of step that I would do. And then when you, like most of these tools, when they crawl on a weekly cadence, they will also tell you how your internal link graph has changed. So that's kind of a shortcut. That's the first thing that I would do to inform this, the changes and anchor tags and what new links you have and what old internal links you might have lost.
Cool. Okay, so we got that data now. We got that in column A of a spreadsheet. What is the next thing that we want to look at? Do we then want to pull in the number of referring domains that that specific URL has? Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
So then we can get that from Ahrefs, we can get that from Moz, we can get that from a number of places, and then we can just basically map that to the URL. Very easy to do. Then after that, would we want to go into some sort of like, for lack of a better term, like topic clustering? Like, what do we want to look at after that? So now we have the URL, we know how many internal links are on that page, blah, blah, blah. And then we also
use
have
like just like Search Console keywords, easy topic clustering, something like that.
Yes, yes, you could. Yeah, you could do that, or you could even jump straight into something like the organic traffic that the URL gets. So from there, you need some sort of indicator of, is the URL performing well from an SEO perspective, or is it performing poorly? And you could take something like average ranking, you could take something like organic traffic, or maybe in some cases, or in a lot of cases, you have something like share of voice, and you understand how much of the share of voice you're actually getting. So whatever SEO indicator helps you to understand the performance of the URL, that's what I would put into the next column.
I'm just thinking too, because we have another report that pulls the, it's a technical audit that David built, but we could look at, David, that 12-month decay or growth of organic traffic to that page, you know, just pulling that from GA and then doing the same thing as in the website quality audit. It's just basically a positive or negative number for how many sessions, that organic sessions that landing page has picked up over the last 12 months.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of visualize. So Kevin, that's like kind of just focusing on landing page level, just looking at just relative performance. But I think this is kind of blowing that out into the graph.
Yeah.
Into like the relationships between pages. But looking at that same, you know, crawl keywords, traffic kind of data set.
Yeah, that sounds super smart to me.
And then, so after that, then we'd want to put in the recommended destination, right? So we've got the URL, we've got the number of links, we've got some sort of organic or some sort of quality signal, for lack of a better term. We've got maybe some sort of topic recommendation based on keywords from GSC. And then we want to spit out some sort of internal link destination, correct? I mean, that's the final piece. And we probably want to do multiple ones. No, I mean, how would you do that?
Well, first of all, I would look at, you know, so that's probably the point where I'd look at some correlations and some patterns. So first of all, I would run like a simple correlation analysis between that SEO quality indicator, or SEO performance indicator, better said, and between your internal linking data. Could be internal page rank, could be click depth, anything like that, and see, is there already some sort of a strong correlation, something like higher than 0.5, 0.6, something in those regards. Sometimes you find something, sometimes not. So try that out, see what comes back. Next is look at the patterns between poorly linked pages and well-linked pages. What you'll often find is that the poorly linked pages underperform in terms of organic SEO, and the well internally linked pages kind of perform according to expectations in most cases, okay? Also depends a bit on the maturity of the site, of course. And then from there, then I would take the step to say, okay, how can I better internally link between the well-linked pages and between the poorly linked pages? How can I balance that internal link graph out better? And that's where you kind of look at what are the page types, or what are the actual pages that are so well internally linked. And that's where you take into account the internal linking and the backlinks, right? That's where that comes into play, and that's where this is important. One step that you can take, for example, which I also outlined in this tipper model, is to normalize the metrics that you're looking at. Because by now you'll be looking at least 3 different types of metrics at different scales. And that's super hard to just like take the average out of, or sum, and then, you know, get a specific value. So what you do is, when you deal with different types of metrics and you want to make them somehow comparable, is you rank them. So each of the columns, you know, your internal PageRank, for example, your backlinks, you rank them from 1 to 1,000 or 10,000, however many rows you have. And then you take the average from that. If that sounds like a super tricky thing, it's actually not. I have this outlined on this article or presentation about Tipper on my site or SlideShare. Like just type in Tipper and you'll find it. It's actually a super simple step. And it comes down to ranking each metric, each column, and then taking the average of that to kind of make them comparable, if that makes sense.
You get that, David?
I might have explained that poorly.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think all that's nicely doable within a Google Sheet for sure.
Yes.
At least if you're working on a site. Well, since you're looking at graph now, it might need to be like under 1,000 pages to really do that well in Sheets. But certainly you can do that on any scale in BigQuery or SQL database.
Yes.
I know I see so much. This is something that I'm always personally confused about. I see a lot of conversation about log file analysis, right? As kind of like the end, or maybe like feeding into some type of PageRank signal. One, like, do you think that's still relevant? Two, like, is that relevant for a smaller site or this type of analysis? And well, we'll start there.
Okay. I think for small sites, it's only relevant when you have some severe issues that don't make sense or some severe changes. The reason for why I love log files is that they're pretty indicative of changes, of algorithm changes, first of all, and of PageRank. And I think it's because log files are so heavily driven by PageRank. And Google admits that publicly, right? They say one of the biggest signals that we use to crawl URLs or to define our crawl rate is basically the authority of that page. It basically comes back to PageRank or whatever they use at the moment. Again,
yeah, whatever we want to call
PageRank,
it,
right? So yes, but I think again, as a smaller site, like you should focus mainly on stuff like content, maybe some links, but like log files are going to be less important unless there's a severe issue. And then you really want to look at changes in crawl frequency. So is there, for example, are there a couple of articles that are just less frequently crawled? And then often what you'll see is that they also decay in traffic. And that's also because they aren't as fresh anymore or as relevant anymore, or they haven't gotten backlinks recently, right? Kind of plays back into all of that stuff. At a large scale, I think log files are much more helpful to identify these problems with internal linking. They kind of go hand in hand, which is why I also have them included in this Tipper model as a kind of source of truth for monitoring the changes that you make in internal linking.
Got it. So it's really like the leading indicator of, success or failure with your strategy.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Cool. That's helpful. So I think for the most part, like most agencies who are in the blueprint aren't necessarily going to need to play around with log files, but I could see that becoming more democratized in the next few years, right? I just think the tooling to me with log files has always been a little bit lacking.
Yes, absolutely. I think some large
enterprise. I was going to say Botify for that is really good. I think like all the major tech platforms are coming out with their own log file analysis.
Yeah.
And just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, David, too, is that like, knowing what I know from being in this industry for so long now is that there's so many different subsets of SEO. Local SEO is completely different than B2B SEO versus e-com SEO. And then there's enterprise SEO, which is like, this is kind of what we were talking about when we first came on, is that the only way you can learn that style of SEO is by going and working on a humongous website.
Yeah.
Because it's almost kind of the inverse of each other. Like when you're a small website, you're running on WordPress, like you kind of have to do some shit to fuck up your technical on a WordPress website. You know what I mean? Pardon my French. But the things that matter are going to be mostly content and links, like site structure, content and links, right? Whereas when you're working with a massive enterprise websites who just like kind of crank out links on their own, just got flywheels of links coming in, it's the exact opposite. They're on humongous legacy enterprise websites, 15 years old. There's all sorts of technical issues. That's why I feel like if you can figure out internal linking, that's where log file analysis comes into play too. Like enterprise SEO is a whole nother game. Somebody actually just mentioned in here too that they would really love a course on that in the blueprint. And it's really hard to teach because so much of it is like forensic SEO. Like you can give people a list of things like, hey, do a log file analysis, do an internal link analysis, but like so much of that is case by case. It's really hard to generalize.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree, David. I would love to get that into the blueprint in the future. Like we have somebody in there now. His name's Rodrigo. He's just done like massive SEO, but it's a lot of the feedback that we get is like, this is either too advanced or this doesn't really apply to like what I'm looking to do. Because unless you're working on an enterprise website, then, you know, like the stuff he's talking about, like he's using like AI for keyword analysis. Even me, I'm like,
I think the like, I think the Sheets approach that like Kevin and we all kind of like walked through is probably, you know, that's probably like the meat and potatoes that most folks are able to pick up.
Yeah,
for sure. You're absolutely right with enterprise SEO. It certainly is its own beast, and it comes with so many more complications. There's like a big politics aspect and red tape and stuff. I think for your audience, so if it's about, let me try to make this a bit more tangible. If it's about smaller agencies dealing with smaller sites, I agree the focus will be much more on stuff like site structure, content, backlinks. Like that's probably going to be the main stuff. When it comes to internal linking there, again, I think like you can change much more from an internal standpoint of view. And at least like the one thing you should really take away is to factor in your backlinks when you assess your internal linking, right? If you have a smaller site with maybe 50 pages, like 50 amazing, I mean like Backlinko, for example, right? It has like, I don't know what, 50 or so pages, but they're all high performers, super long stuff, tons of backlinks, right? Like the way that he should think about internal linking is really from a page to page perspective, where he can like crawl his site with Screaming Frog, and then pull in backlinks in a spreadsheet and then see, is there any kind of major miss where one page gets tons of backlinks with a certain anchor text and that page does not link to that other page for which those anchor texts would actually be more relevant, right? Like you can zoom in a ton, I think, if you have smaller sites and smaller clients, and you can make, that's the best use of your time when it comes to internal linking.
So, we just have a couple of minutes left here. First of all, thanks so much for coming on. This has been a really interesting conversation. I'm sure, hope the people watching have enjoyed it as well. So I guess is looking forward, like 2020 and next couple of years, is there anything that's on your radar other than, the kind of like topic clustering type of analysis? Anything that you guys are thinking about internally?
Man, so much. I mean, I have so much on my radar. I think what I'm working on a lot, without giving away too much, because like competitors are always listening, is certainly building a stronger bridge between revenue and SEO. So and when I'm talking about like becoming very sophisticated in how to drive revenue with SEO. It sounds a bit kind of fuzzy around the edges. And I'm trying to be a bit careful with my words here, but like, how do we build almost automated systems that allow us to target specific segments of our business, that need the most SEO help? So how can we become way more intelligent about that type of stuff? And then also just, on the other side of the spectrum is like building out a legit media publication, like that's another completely different type of challenge that is not so related to technical SEO, right? But like, how do we put that in place, and how do we create outstanding content and all that kind of stuff? So thinking about various problems. And in terms of internal linking, I think it's just like automating a lot of the things that you already mentioned, David, and maybe you can, I'm sure you have a lot of crazy ideas that we're not even thinking about yet. But how can we do all that stuff that how can we productionize some of that stuff, right? And I think some of the tools that we're using will take care of that as well. I think what we're currently doing with BigQuery is probably something that a lot of these tools are trying to provide out of the box, where you take different streams of data and you just give very simple and easy recommendations. Yeah, that's top of mind.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I always lean towards just like own your data, have it in BigQuery for yourself to analyze. Don't silo in someone else's tool. But interesting. Ryan, do you have anything else?
No, man, I appreciate your time, Kevin. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. This was always fun nerding out for sure. We're definitely going to be building some sort of internal linking tool. We'll probably send it your way just to get your thoughts on it if you can spare 5 minutes to look at a final version of it, because I think it's something that just internal linking in general. I know we definitely skew towards the enterprise side, which is really difficult to do, but more impactful. So you're willing to invest more time and resource into it. But I also think that even people on the smaller scale of SEO, there's not really any tool out there that does anything. They'll find the internal links for you, but it's such a manual process trying to figure out, how to set it all up. We definitely want to try and build something that can help out with that, because it's something that we get asked about quite a bit, actually. And I know it's been on David's radar for a while to try and figure something out. So I think we got a lot of valuable information from you about the types of things that we want to look for when we're putting something like that together. So we appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to look at a tool at any point in time. And thank you so much for bringing me on. I think what you guys are doing with Blueprint is amazing and certainly needed in the space out there. So yeah, I really appreciate just being on. I hope that it was somewhat valuable for the audience, even though we talked about some pretty funky concepts. But yeah, man, like I'm super excited and pumped to see what you guys are doing in the future.
It's good, man. I sometimes I like going down these rabbit holes, even though I know that these conversations might be over a lot of people's head. I think it's really good to create depth for people to understand just how deep this game is and how many levels to SEO that there is. And it's also something that what I do love about SEO is that you don't have to be an expert in everything. A lot of people think like we'll kind of like neg people for like not knowing technical SEO or not knowing link building or something like that. But like the industry is so big and so deep that like you can choose what interests you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if link building is your thing, or if like content is your thing, like you can build a multi-million-dollar business off that, or you can go work for a company and pull in $250,000 a year as a director of SEO somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Or like director of content somewhere. So these conversations are good because I think a lot of people learn SEO. And the people in the Blueprint aren't beginners, so they have quite a bit of experience. They know SEO, but again, especially the way that we teach SEO, it's very process focused. It's always good to talk to people like yourself who are doing stuff that's outside of the box for what we're doing and what we're teaching. Just again, to just add depth to people's understanding of this industry that's continuing to grow. And these conversations are good too, because if you don't have to be a technical SEO expert, like I said, but you have to understand like how technical SEO fits into it, because in my opinion, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, but the future of SEO is technical. As the algorithm continues to normalize, as links will continue to normalize, it's these technical things. And it's not so much like fixing a canal tag, but it's what you're talking about. It's like understanding how to take the next step and using automation and data to figure out how to do this stuff at scale. I truly believe that the next 5 years of SEO is going to be dominated. The companies that are going to dominate are going to be companies like G2 that are thinking about it and attacking and investing the resources into things like this, not just like, how do we build more links? You know what I'm saying?
I hope so.
Super important.
Cool.
So yeah, we appreciate your time, man.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Hey, my pleasure.
Have fun.
It's great talking to you.
And everyone out there, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to tune in next week. We'll be doing this again. We'll be talking about with John Christian about how to build events, big conferences. He's the founder of Advanced Search Summit. They have an event in April next month out in Napa. Dude really knows his shit. I'm excited to talk to him. So hopefully you guys tune in then. Take care.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.